Okay, well, once all those bolts are out, you can then just gently tap on either side until you're off the two locating pins. There's one on this side here, one on the other side, and then it should come off pretty easily after that. Okay, now we're going to have our oil cylinder here, which just slides off like that. Yeah, that looks to be not too bad at all. Yeah, I think that's about right. Should be okay, that. Our cam as well. Yeah, it's still pretty good. You could even, I could even regularly make out a number 1 stamped on there, by the looks of it. Yeah, it seems to be a number 1 stamped on the first lobe there. Interesting. Never noticed that before. This engine doesn't seem to be very worn at all internally. Seems pretty good. All these bits will want cleaning up when we're done. Cat is trying to get through the cat flap. Yeah, even the lifters look pretty good. This one looks like it might be actually even marked for the exhaust side. See if that one's marked as well. Nothing marked on that, but that one seems to look like it has an E stamped in the middle of it. It's hard to really tell. Looks like it though. Right, well, whichever one's got the little tiny mark on it that looks like an E is for the exhaust side. Right, well, there we are. We are now finally at the point where we can start to remove the big end. Okay, got those locking tabs bent over now so we can get to our big end bolts. I've already just loosened them off because I'd be covering the whole camera angle anyway, whilst applying enough force. Whilst we're here, it's a good idea to just scratch a line on one side of the big end so you know which way the actual big end went around, because if you mix up the two halves, so let's just try and put some scratches there to mark that. And it's got some scratches right now, which will be okay. Just so we know which way around that was. The big end should just split. That's it. Oh yeah, on the Briggs and Strattons anyway, it's impossible to get in the wrong way around. They're actually, they've actually got markings there. They only line up one way, so you don't have to scratch the marks there. Big end looks pretty good. Yeah. It's even cleaner than the Suffolk I took apart earlier. Right, just put that on there, because we're going to bolt that back together in a minute. And we can have a go at pushing the old piston up and out of the way, which is a little bit fiddly. I'll take the crank out until this piston is out of the engine. Oh, been a little bit stubborn. There she is. That's not bad really. There's a couple of scores down this side. But no, that's not too bad. Yeah, a couple of scores. Some light scoring there. Might have to replace the piston rings, but I think the piston will be okay. It's heavily carboned up though. There's a lot of carbon on the top of that piston. Right, it's just, yeah, all the rings are nice and free. And they actually compress into a very small gap actually. Those rings will probably be okay. We should try running it without taking these rings out. I don't think we're going to have any problems with those. Don't know though, we might see if we can get replacements. This is an old engine now, so it can make it sometimes more difficult to get the replacement parts. Just put the big end bolts back in just so it's all together and you can't lose anything then. Right, we should be able to actually slide out the crankshaft now. It should come out without putting up a fight. There we go. There we have it. That is a pretty clean crank. That's not too bad at all. Can't really see why that back bearing put up such a fight to get the bottom of the crankcase open. Looks fine. But yeah, a little bit of cleaning up to do there. But she's pretty good. That's not too shabby. A couple of score marks in the lower side of the fore, but again, she's not too bad really. Still got even original cross hatching in the bottom. She hasn't been run very much. She's not been terrifically well looked after, but she hasn't been used very much, which is pretty good. It's not bad at all. Got a little bit of an oil spill there now. It's for tidying up later, but bar the valves now and this back cowling, we've pretty much got the whole entire engine in bits. That didn't take too long at all. Okay, now we can remove this bottom section of cowling. It's just another one of those small 1/4 inch. The socket set would actually blooming. Oh, Christ. It's just the one bolt that holds this. They're sometimes stuck if they're left outside, and that's why it's important to remove these every now and again. Got some horrible crud in there blocking the whole back of the fin, so that get no airflow whatsoever. So that's why it's important to undo those every now and again. Give them a thorough clean out. Got the intake tube, may as well take that off now. Gives us a bit better access to the fins underneath then. These are usually caked in crud as well, just like this one is. To make finding the little bolts a little bit interesting. I think we're going to have to replace the oil seals on this engine, especially the bottom one. Looks like it's had a bit of wear. Other than that, I think everything else is pretty good. Make sure we've got no washers there. Doesn't look like we have. No. Yeah, well, the old gasket split, but that isn't a problem. Put a new one on there anyway. Right, all we've got to get out of the engine now is the valves, which isn't an easy job. So all we got to do is open the valve chest cover looks like a 7/16. Yep, no, not 7/16, 5/16. Oh, there's two of those. Let's remove the cover. Right. Well, there are our valves. Exhaust, inlet. Exhaust valves always have the heavier spring. The inlet valve is slightly softer spring, but the exhaust valve is always the slightly harder spring on these engines. That pretty much goes for every small little engine you'll work on. Okay, well we have both inlet and exhaust valve out of the engine. Couldn't really show it in the engine, I don't have the best camera in the world for close-ups, so we decided to do it out of the engine. So we have this little notch here in the end of the valve spring retainer, and that basically indicates where the slot is. So it's got a bigger hole where the valve stem can pass through. So you want to try and turn that to the very, very back, so then when you compress your spring, the actual valve, it'll be a lot easier to get that valve spring retainer to move from there where it's locked in to there where you can slide it out. And once that's pinned, you'll know that's come off, because the valve spring will drop right to the very bottom of the valve, so it'll all be at the very bottom, and the valve will just slide out of the engine then. So that's basically how you get those out. There's not a lot to it really. You don't necessarily need a valve spring compressor, although it will make your life a hell of a lot easier if you do. I just used 2 screwdrivers to pop them out, which isn't too bad. It takes a little while and a little bit of faffing. They're a lot harder to put in without a valve spring compressor than they are to get out. Putting them in will be a hell of a job with no valve spring compressor, so I might see if I can get one beforehand, but if not, it'll be another time where we just have to make do with what we have. But you can see the inlet valve spring is it's not as stiff as the exhaust valve spring, so that side needs to go on the exhaust when you put it back in. Anyway, the engine, minus the exhaust, is actually completely in bits. Yeah, that's not bad going. We've done quite well. I don't think that exhaust is going to come out of there without putting up a fight, so we might just leave that. It's not going to get in the way of lapping the valves in, and we can still scrape some carbon out of that exhaust valve as well with it in place, so that shouldn't be a problem. Anyway, the block looks pretty good, all the bearings look okay, yeah, everything looks alright. So there you go, that's how you strip a Briggs and Stratton engine. It's not really difficult at all, there's not a lot involved. It's just a matter of undoing bolts and having a little bit of time and patience. Doesn't matter what order you do things in really. I would recommend taking all the external bits off of the engine before you try and split the crankcase. Just makes life a bit easier, and you know then if you've got all of your points out of these old engines that you're not going to cause any damage to the coil or anything whilst you're splitting the back of the crankcase off. It just makes life a lot easier taking all the external bits of an engine off, and then you're just left with the bare block, which is nice and easy to clean then once everything is off, and everything in their individual state is also easy to clean, which is good. Anyway, we're going to start cleaning up a few bits of this engine now. We'll start with cleaning up all the external bits, all the boring bits, and get back to a point where we can start to think about assembling it again. We've got a little bit of work to do to the deck as well. Yeah, but there you go. That was me taking apart a Briggs and Stratton.